Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Superman issue 40, written by Joshua Williamson, with art by Dan Mora, colors by Alejandro Sanchez, and letters by Ariana Maher. Superboy Prime goes up against Manchester Black this issue as the villain tells Prime that he knows what Superman is like, finding him to be a bit of a dweeb and maybe he should reboot him, thinking he might make the rocket crash into the Kent farm and kill them, or maybe even he's going to go and have Joker kill Batman, or maybe even have Wonder Woman become an eye patch wearing gun-toting soldier. Manchester thinks that these are all types of superheroes he can get behind, but Prime tells him they are called Elseworlds. But what Manchester actually wants is for things to be grimdark for grimdark's sake. This is some great use of Prime's meta knowledge going on here, since there was a point where he was that annoying fan, the one writing letters to DC editorial or in the forums talking about problems with continuity and characters not acting like how he thinks they should act. He was once that archetype, and that's developed into the character that Manchester is being here, where all they want is the action and violence, no actual character work or depth, they just want the flashy image. Prime also dealing with that as the villain to him is so interesting and a great use of who he is as a character and what he was. He's basically facing his own worst attitudes. Manchester thinks that Prime wants to go back to simpler times and make things more real. The villain blasts Prime with his new powers, knocking him out as he drags him to a crack in reality, holding Prime over the endless pit of reboots, retcons, and redos. Manchester reveals that what he really wants from Prime is his knowledge of their world, and he's only gotten a little of it so far, but once Prime gives it all up, he can make a deal with him. Prime weakly tells Manchester that he just wanted to show people he could be Superman, and the villain thinks he gave it a good shot, but he still isn't trusted by anyone. He shows Prime Robin telling Batman that Prime is dangerous, but he's also a joke, and he'll never be Superman, something that Power Girl and even Lois thinks of as well. Prime knows that this is all just some trick, since Lois would never actually say that about him. He smashes Manchester in the stomach hard, but Manchester anticipated this since he wants Prime to get angry. He wants a Superman who is willing to kill him. This really is the greatest fanboy fight ever. Like I said, these are two guys that represent two very different types of fanboys. And their whole thing is they're basically fighting over what the universe should be, how characters should act and whatnot, and it's something I can see Williamson is having a blast writing. Prime thinks that Manchester played his hand too early, since now he knows the villain has his power because of the mental connection they have, meaning they're actually still in Prime's head, not actual limbo. The hero decides to take Manchester's fight to his own turf, blasting through a broken shard of reality nearby. Back in Metropolis, Witchfire heads round to Asteroid Comics to look for CK, but Prime's boss tells her that he's not been by to work, figuring he's been up all night reading comics and just slept in. Suddenly, Wynn knocks a comic off the shelf and the man picks it up, finding it's Superman issue 40, figuring that it was a book that was released just this week. And it was, because it's the book we're reading about right now and what I'm talking about right now. Suddenly, Manchester and Prime burst out of the pages of the book, with people thinking that CK is just cosplaying as Superboy Prime. Prime hates that his secret identity seems to have been outed, telling Witchfire to get the people to safety as he confronts Manchester, wanting to see if he really bleeds now that they are in the real world. I like that we managed to work the comic book store back into the plot in some way. It's a neat bit to have Prime go to work at one, and I do wish we get more of this as his job. We got a little bit here and there, but he's been doing hero work, so that kind of took over everything, and maybe it's something we can circle back to at some point, since it was a neat meta bit for the hero who knows all about DC Comics and superheroes and their continuity to have a job at a comic book store. That's really fun. Manchester wants the hero to try and hurt him as he decides to let his words do the fighting for him for a change, speaking literally as Manchester brings his speech bubbles to life, telling Prime he used to bully kids for him for their lunch money. The speech bubble attacks, becoming an onomatopoeia to hurt Prime and knock him around the store. The book continues to swerve creatively with Prime and Manchester's powers, using literal words as the weapon is so cool, since it's using what is arguably Superman's most powerful weapon, his words, the speeches, the inspiration he can do through his words against the hero himself. It's also letting Dan Mora get a little creative with the fights, which I'm sure get a little bit boring from time to time with just hero punches villain and vice versa. Manchester grabs Prime, slapping him around the face a little as he tells us readers that we like seeing Prime get punched and hurt, paying for the privilege to see it. And yeah, most fans do want that from this book and really only want that one thing. Manchester thinks that Prime is going to try and figure out what Superman would do, but instead he decides to show Manchester what he would do, tossing a long box of unclaimed comic pulls at Manchester, hitting him square in the face. Manchester erupts in anger, proclaiming that he hates comic books, tearing up the issues piled around him, as he says that they are a product of a bygone era and they are as outdated and stupid as Superman. Prime knows that comics are dying and will be just as dead as Prime is about to be very soon, but Prime blasts Manchester with his heat vision, claiming that comics are surviving, something the villain doesn't believe, calling the hero a joke for believing Superman stands for hope, since that's just all marketing buzzwords. Superboy Prime finally gets a chance for his big Superman speech, something that I have been waiting for since it's all been building to this. Prime says that he came from a world where Superman is not real, but Manchester lives in a world where he is, and he still complains about it despite being so lucky, since if they fall, Superman or another hero will be there to make sure they catch them. And yeah, sometimes they do fail and make mistakes, but there's always hope, and Manchester thinks hope sucks because he has no hope in himself. Prime reveals that he was bullied as a kid by people like Manchester, and Superman never came to save him, and the day he finally did, he lost everything, and it broke him probably forever. He knows that he'll never be Superman, and it hurts to say it, so he hides the truth by making jokes. Man, what a fantastic little speech, and one that perfectly echoes the journey Prime has gone through this series, and even before this during Death Metal, where this whole sort of saga begun. He knows he's not the Superman everyone wants, but he'll try his hardest to be one, and that in my book makes him a Superman. It's the willingness to try and be a hero is what makes him a hero. Prime says that when he's lost or afraid, he knows people of his world love Superman as much as he does, since it's real in their hearts, and Superman makes them better people. Manchester simply asks if Prime thinks that's the case, then why isn't he on his old world instead of being here? He blasts Prime out of the building, finding himself done with Prime, so he's going to rip his mind away and use his knowledge to do some real damage. Manchester picks up one of the onomatopoeias of the window breaking and smashes it over Prime's head, telling him that he is just meh and nothing more. Prime weakly tells Manchester about how when he was stuck in limbo with Alexander Luthor Jr., the man would always joke about how Prime had continuity vision. He grabs Manchester, since if the villain wants all his knowledge, then he can have it. Prime yells out his famous primetime catchphrase as he bombards Manchester's mind with every single bit of comic knowledge he knows and more, flooding the villain's eyes with pictures of crises and reboots and retcons. This is honestly the perfect way to end this whole fanboy fight. Prime just had more knowledge than Manchester Black, who, let's be honest, he's like one of those fake comic book Twitter fans that only reads out of context panels in Twitter posts or something like that and thinks that that gives them the whole story. Hell, even just a couple of issues ago, Prime made a joke literally about that. Now, while Manchester is defeated, it's not exactly a happy ending, as Mr. Terrific learns of what Superboy Prime did by uploading all of their secrets and knowledge to the villain's head, screaming at Prime for doing so. He hopes the Phantom Zone can hold Manchester as Prime tries to apologize. Lois soon catches up to him, learning that the hero thinks that he failed big time. Prime though wants Lois to let Power Girl know that they should probably talk, if she's up for it that is, taking off, but not before telling Lois that she's the best, but he's got another mess to clean up himself. So the Power Girl line really interested me because yeah, he's got some history with Power Girl, like obviously Power Girl's from Earth 2, he knew the Earth 2 Superman, there's also some other stuff where Kara confronted him about wanting to destroy Earth 2 during the Infinite Crisis and all of that sort of stuff, so there's a big history there, almost as big as his history with Connor, so getting to talk with both of them is going to be very interesting, especially if they're going to do it across Kingdom of Zod, which I assume they're going to do that. I assume Power Girl is going to get involved in that because it seems to be like an all hands on deck Superman family event. If not, probably after it or wherever Prime ends up. But I'm really glad that he's like trying to reach out to these people he knows he wronged and is trying to, you know, make it better, trying to sort some stuff out, you know, and that's exactly what needs to happen. It doesn't need to keep being the fights over and over again. They need to, you know, step forward and evolve and move on to the next thing. Prime soon returns to the comic book shop, apologizing to the guys there since he needed a place he felt safe to fight Manchester Black. His boss says he can make it up to them by helping them move some of the long boxes around, confusing Prime since apparently he still now has his job. The guys tell him his job is still there if he wants it, understanding everything about the whole secret identity thing, and they have his back and they're not going to tell anyone. I'm really glad the comic book shop is sticking around, and how cool is it that now Prime has two nerdy best friends he can just be himself around, and people who are going to protect his secret identity. Prime is happy to have a supporting cast now as Witchfire comes by too, apologizing for the last time they met since she got caught up in the moment after her big coven spell was a success. Prime understands, calling their team up very fun. Witchfire thinks that Prime getting torn through reality and then escaping through comic books was kind of epic, and he beat the bad guys, so that's a win. This is going to be great if this is the supporting cast that Prime ends up having wherever he ends up going off to after this ongoing. It's real nice balance of powered people and just normal people, and it's people who look like they might teach some things to Prime about superheroing and also about being just a functional member of society, something that Prime has not had. So I'm intrigued to see him just trying to live a normal quote-unquote life when he's not Supermaning around. Prime doesn't think that this is some sort of win that Superman would have had since he made a mess, but Rebecca doesn't care since he still got to keep his job. However, Prime thinks that it's more than that since now the League are mad at him again and he thought he was owed a redemption arc. Prime realizes that he got so caught up in wanting to be like Superman and wanting that redemption arc that he did something he hates. He ignored continuity, and Manchester Black took advantage of that. He thinks to show the heroes that he can make amends, he's got to find a way to get home again, and Manchester may have given him a bit of an idea on how to do that. He doesn't think that redemption is as easy as a page turn, but Rebecca understands, but tells him what she loves about comics is that every month and every week is an opportunity for something good and to discover something great. She knows this week might be hard, but next week could be awesome, and every Wednesday is another chance. Man, this just spelled out exactly what I say in a number of my videos, and that comics are awesome. There's good, there's bad, there's things I like, there's things I hate, there's things that other people like that I hate, and things that I like that other people hate as well. You know, it's a constantly changing and shifting medium, and that's awesome. You can't always have the same thing over and over and over again. You got to keep changing things up and finding something new to like, or, you know, moving on with a character, you know, like what Prime is doing here, how he's gotten some amazing character development and actually realized, oh, I need to be a better person. He's changing, he's moving on, and that's a good thing. Change is a good thing. It's something I think people coming into comics, or maybe you don't know a lot about comics, or even if you do know a lot about comics, but I think it's just something that everyone needs to know, that, you know, there's always change and there's always things moving around in comics. Nothing ever stays the same for very long, and I feel learning that makes for a better reading experience. Prime and Rebecca fist bump to celebrate Wednesdays as Prime asks Rebecca if she wants to use her witchcraft to help rebuild the comic shop, and she's all for it. The book doesn't end there as Prime pops in again, asking us if we enjoyed his little arc, knowing some of us hate him and some of us love him, but he's glad he got a few issues to hang out and learn that change isn't easy, but it's good to believe that you can change and be better. He thanks everyone for reading, promising that he'll be sticking around, but before he can reveal where and who he's going to be adventuring with next, Supergirl interrupts him, wondering who he's talking to. Prime waves it off as being a bit too complicated to talk about, changing into his costume as Kara tells him about the problem with El Caldero and how it's an all hands on deck mission, and they'll all be meeting at Lois's apartment in a few hours. Kara hopes he'll play nice and not get into any fights with anyone, and Prime doesn't think he could pick a fight with anyone there, as later he almost immediately gets into a fight with Connor once he arrives. What a fun way to round out the issue, connecting it up with Action Comics issue 1100, teasing out that Prime is not going anywhere, and if in fact he seems to be, he's going to be a mainstay, if not in the Superman ongoing, then in something else. I would not be surprised if he ends up getting his own book in some way, where we can tie off a lot of the loose ends left over from the series about him wanting to return back to his own world which was destroyed, mind you. But I'm excited to see where they're going to go with him. This was a really fun arc with Prime. I like that he had some great character development and he actually learned something that even some readers could do with learning as well. Superman issue 40 was a fantastic ending to Superboy Prime's time as the main lead of the book. It gave him a real meaty bit of character development, something he sorely needed, while also being a celebration of comics and what makes them so fucking awesome. Williamson has his work cut out for him now since he's got a follow-up from this banger of an arc, but I can't wait to see what he does with Kingdom of Zod and what becomes of Superboy Prime later on this year. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10.